If you're a veteran, one of the best things you can do for yourself is go through the claims process correctly. And in this video, we're going to be talking about what that actually means. I served in the military for 8 years in the National Guard, and in that time I deployed. And after my deployment, I did not understand the VA claims process one bit. Now, as I make these YouTube videos, I teach this process because I learned it in depth, start to finish. And this video is going to be one of my modules from my claims course, which you can check out in the link below. And we're going to talk about what it means to be strategic within your claim. And so if you're on the military side right now watching this video saying, I'm going to get out soon, just know that the VA is not going to be like going to your doctor that you've been going to within the military timeline that you've been on. It's going to be a lot different, and there's a lot of work that you need to be doing yourself. So if you're going through the claims process and you want to learn more, check out more of my videos that I have on YouTube, and I have a link below with 20% off my full course. So if you learned something from this video, check out the course because there's a lot more modules within there with about 8 hours of content to get you squared away on everything that you need to know. Right now, let's jump into the video.
Welcome back to Module 2, what to claim and how to file, and creating a strategy with high value claims. This is probably the most important video of this whole course, I'm not gonna lie to you. What are high value claims? So by definition, they are claims for conditions that carry higher disability ratings and compensation due to their severity of impact to you, the veteran. I'll be clear here. There is no claim that is a low value claim by how it affects you as a person. Don't take this personal, right? But the VA has deemed certain claims as more problematic and affect different areas and severity levels. We could probably agree that PTSD and mental health is clearly more severe to more people on average than just spraining your ankle and getting a 10% rating. I would say that I personally would rather have a sprained ankle that will heal quickly and maybe agitate me than have anxiety, which is what I have. Anxiety affects me every day, and anxiety affects so many areas of my life. So it is typically, some conditions are rated much higher, right? If you lose a limb, there's a very high rating in a very multitude of areas. If you have cancer, that is 100% rating because the severity of cancer is obviously there. It's very severe. It is worse than a sprained ankle. Some examples are PTSD. Anything with mental health is an umbrella and a big bucket of symptoms and severities and combining a bunch of them together. So you could have anxiety, depression, PTSD all link under one mental health umbrella, but they're rated pretty high. I think most people get a 50% rating, and it can go up to 100% just on its own. I have that as my highest rating right now. Sleep apnea with a CPAP required is an automatic 50% with a CPAP required. Again, this isn't just, I have sleep apnea, I have a CPAP, perfect. It's proving everything else we've talked about, but it's a very high rating. Migraines tend to land between 30 to 50% typically. Mental health disorders, this kind of goes back to PTSD. Technically, there's PTSD and mental health disorders, like they will give you a rating under the same umbrella, but if you're not claiming PTSD, you can actually claim depression separately. But it's typically going to fall under the same umbrella, and you have the highest rating with PTSD because there's so many criteria that can fall under it from a multitude of bad experiences and a multitude of symptoms that cross over from anxiety, depression, and all these other things together. Why a high value claim should be your starting point? So key benefits here. That higher initial rating means greater compensation up front. As we've talked about and as you've seen with the math, starting with your highest value claim, let's say you start at 70%, everything else after that is starting a much more higher average than those lower value claims. These claims are often easier to link to secondary conditions. If you have tinnitus, is a low value claim. There's a lot of conditions that link off of tinnitus. High value claims tend to link because of severity into secondary conditions that can also be quite severe. If you have really bad anxiety, there's a good chance you have stomach issues. Anxiety draws physical pain and ailments, especially to the gut. There's science that backs this up. And you can have IBS. You could have GERD. I have GERD. I have a rating for GERD because I have trouble swallowing, and they linked it from high stress. They put a camera down my throat and checked everything out and said, you have GERD, and there's nothing that shows anything else besides your stress levels being high. That was it. I got a rating for GERD for that. So there's a strategic advantage with this, right? You can build your claim around conditions that are well documented and easier to prove. Understanding a high value claim doesn't necessarily mean high value claim means it's the highest rating. It might also open up the door for secondary claims to be able to link to them appropriately. Maybe you can't prove you have migraines from service, but you can prove you have migraines from tinnitus. And tinnitus was proved from service. If you get denied those migraines up front, you can redo another claim and say, it's actually easier for me to prove it from tinnitus because it does happen when I have tinnitus. Maybe that's your way in to get migraines at 50% rating with tinnitus at 10% together. There's always ways to work this out. You have to think strategically with high value claims, what they mean and how you use them to your advantage. It's not lying about any of this stuff. It's just understanding how they link together and why that's important to understand. Connecting secondary claims to high value claims. So I just started touching on this, but what are secondary conditions? Like, what are these secondary claims? They're disabilities caused or worsened by their primary service connected conditions. I'm going to repeat that again. Disabilities caused or worsened by a primary service connected condition. So the example here had some examples before, but PTSD can often lead to sleep apnea, hypertension, or GERD. It makes sense, right? PTSD affects different parts of the body. It will make you not sleep. There's a chance the stress of anxiety might give you hypertension. I'm afraid of getting that someday from stress. I constantly have to work on being calmer. And GERD is another condition that I personally got rated because of a mental health rating. So those link together because PTSD, as it shows, affects a lot of parts of your life. It affects a lot of parts of your body. And that's significantly easier to say, I have sleep apnea secondary to my PTSD. I have hypertension, couldn't prove it from service. Let's say it was 10 years later, right? That's harder to prove in service. It's easier to say, I have it from stress, and that stress is from service with that rating already there. Chronic back pain is another one. I have sciatic nerve pain down my right leg and my left. Chronic back pain that I was able to prove from service, again, with an MRI, which might not have even been helpful, caused sciatica for me. And it really did. I had a sciatic nerve pinch. It was in the MRI. It could also cause depression. You could get a mental health rating because of pain from your back. Back pain at a high level is unreal how bad it is. I had a period of time for a couple weeks, I could not walk at all. Literally. The bulging discs were unreal how bad they were. It was scary, really scary. I was mentally unwell. I have a mental health rating from service. I do not have it from back pain. I could understand how chronic back pain, even at a lower rating, could really mess you up mentally. You're a physical person. You're in the infantry. You're a stud. You're 23. You're Twisted Steel and sex appeal. And guess what? You can't do anything because of your back. You blew your back out. Bad. It will cause a mental hurdle for you to be unhealthy again. Physically not be able to do stuff. For me, that is key to a lot of my happiness, is physically being able to do stuff. That's why I go to PT, chiropractor, and massage therapist for my back. I try to do everything physically to feel better because it helps me mentally feel better. So the importance of the PACT Act. This is good. This is life-changing shit right here. So what is the PACT Act? Have you even heard of it? What is it? The PACT Act expands presumptive conditions for veterans exposed to toxic substances during specific deployments, and I'm going to add in specific timelines. The key benefits are this presumes certain conditions are service-connected, removing the need to prove a direct link. I'm going to repeat this one again too. This presumes certain conditions are service-connected, removing the need to prove a direct link. This means you do not need a nexus letter or any doctor to say this was from service. You need a current diagnosis still. You need to have been deployed in a certain area during a certain time frame. But then they assume that because of that, these conditions are warranted if you have that diagnosis. I have one of these claims specifically for sinusitis. I got that rating. I got the claim approved, and I walked in there and I had proof of me going to the doctor for sinus issues for a couple years. I had proof of that. I had a diagnosis and I had evidence of me collecting a antibacterial to clear my sinuses, because this happens frequently, more than once a year. And it affects my vertigo and affects up my whole system. Sinusitis was on a presumptive condition list for me being deployed to the Middle East in 2016 to 2017. I did not have to show that this was from service. I just had my DD-214, and I said at the CMP exam, I said, I've had sinus problems. Here's my proof. I wrote a personal statement, and I was deployed in this area. She said, okay, cool. Tell me about it. I gave details. I said we were exposed to fecal matter, to toxic substances. I had a memo that proved that. I didn't even need it because I was deployed there. But I had a lot of evidence to back it up and say, I think my sinus problems are from this. And under the PACT Act, I didn't have to show that the doctor agreed. They just agreed on it. So there's a list of conditions that are under the PACT Act that are easier to show and approve your claim because you don't need to have a nexus letter or a doctor showing this. Remember, you still need a personal statement to probably back you, tell that story. You need a DD-214 that shows you were deployed in those areas, or the airspace is very specific. You need a diagnosis, a current one, to walk in there and to be able to understand and win a claim under the PACT Act. So who qualifies? These are veterans that are deployed during specific periods of times and locations. People that tend to be around burn pits, Agent Orange exposure for, the Vietnam veteran era, the Korean War era potentially as well. And for post 9/11 veterans, there's a lot of, burn pits and toxic exposures, and including dust and including radiation, in some areas, including fumes from airlines. If you're on an airstrip constantly, that can cause health issues as well, right? So those all qualify under the PACT Act. How to build a high value claims strategy. We've already been talking about this, but we're going to break it down. I'm probably going to be repeating stuff because this is where it's really important. Identify your high value conditions. Start with the most severe and well-documented conditions. What affects you the most? What affects you the most, and you have a diagnosis and all the right documentation to prove that this was from service? Or what do you know that is pretty much a guarantee, like the PACT Act, right? I'm not going to say it is a guarantee, but you're able to prove and say, yeah, this happened, this is here, this is a problem, and I was deployed in this country. Like, this is there. Gather your medical evidence, use VA records, private doctors, etc. Leverage the PACT Act. So I just talked about it, but we're going to go back and say, check the presumptive condition list related to your deployments. It's broken down into Gulf War veterans, Vietnam veterans, post 9/11 veterans. I don't even know if they have much before Vietnam War veterans at this point. I'm sure they do if you dug into it. But check the presumptive condition list for the countries of deployment, if you were post 9/11, countries and dates, and check the list of conditions. You might have a condition that you have not realized was diagnosed. Maybe you never got a diagnosis, but it affects you. There's a big list of these conditions. Asthma is one of them. If you get asthma at any point in your life, asthma is a direct, any point in your life you get asthma diagnosed, that is a presumptive condition. That is a yes for post 9/11. This is a big deal. File secondary claims. So you're going to build connections from your high value claims. If there was no way to prove GERD for me from service, despite having stomach issues in service, I did not have that proof. I connected GERD to other issues, and I built out a list. I said, okay, here's the stuff that I know I have evidence for. Here's the stuff that affects me with a diagnosis, but I don't have the evidence. Am I able to connect it? Does it make sense to connect it? Is it truthful and honest to connect it? You also need to say that to yourself. You have to be understand that you're liable for going through this claims process legally. But it is very fair to say that one problem like PTSD affects you and creates GERD. That is a very fair statement. Just understand when it does and why it does. And again, consult a VSO. If you are having trouble with this, consult a VSO if you need to. So common pitfalls to avoid for you guys, right? Filing claims without the medical evidence. High value claims require strong supporting documentation. Ignoring the secondary claims. Missing the opportunities to connect conditions and boost your combined ratings. Why ignore the secondary claims? There's secondary conditions that you might have. And mind you, when you do a claim, if this is your first claim ever, you have no rating. When you go through this process, you can write out what's a primary condition and what's a secondary. And when you do the secondary block, you have to connect it to the primary. So the doctor will read and look through those. So you need to know that GERD is related to migraines, or GERD is related to PTSD, I'm sorry. You need to know that, because when you chart this out, when you're putting your claim together with evidence, that has to match up. That story has to make sense to them. And overlooking the PACT Act. Don't miss out on easier approved presumptive conditions. There are many on that list. There's a link in this that gives you all of the conditions. I left it in there. Look in the notes, and it shows all the presumptive conditions and what they are. And look in the schedule of rating for each one. See if you have a diagnosis you've never been to the doctor for. See if you've been to the doctor, but you need it updated, and get ready to add that to your list. Make sure in the comments you're writing out that it's from the PACT Act as well, that you are acknowledging this deployment supports the PACT Act for this condition that I am diagnosed with. Write that in a personal statement. That's all we have for this video. Let's keep kicking along on Module 2 in the next one.